Hello my friends, and welcome to the hardcore fandom for Soulframe, Digital Extreme's next game. Now if you haven't heard, Digital Extremes is creating another MMO. You can probably predict it's going to have a similar structure to the way Warframe plays out, but it is clearly, and they have been very direct about this, a Souls-like inspired game, and you could probably tell that just from the name Soulframe alone. But as part of the hype material that Digital Extremes has released for the game, they have created a website that has a puzzle on it, and solving this puzzle gets you the ability to essentially reserve your name for your player character when the game does eventually release. If you didn't know, one of the early ways that Warframe delivered its story was in creating ARGs, altered reality games, and one of the earliest ways they did that was by giving each of the major factions within the game a unique language and alphabet that acted as a direct cipher with English letters. So by putting language in the game, by decorating the artistry of the game with these languages, they created opportunities for players to decipher them and uncover bits of Warframe's story by simply reading it in the world of the game as they were playing. And that is something that I find really exciting, especially because it looks like they're going to be doing that really early, right away with Soulframe. Now, when you first go to the website, you are going to see essentially the title, Envoys of Ode Sky, and next to each of the letters there's going to be a little symbol. And so from just looking at that, you can see that the symbols and the letters probably correspond, but there's this little case that needs to be unlocked in order for you to progress further into the website. So I went ahead and I figured out the solution. I recorded it so that I could show you the solution, and just to let you know, part of the process here was absolutely a bit of trial and error, some guesses to actually figure out what the middle letters were. The D and the K had no corresponding symbols, so you pretty much just had to guess, and you had 3 chances before the puzzle would reset, but essentially you had infinite chances. You could try as many times as you'd like. So let's go ahead and watch that now, see the solution, so that you can get an idea of how Digital Extremes was setting up this cipher to be a little mini game, a little puzzle to solve for its early fans. Great. So once you did solve the cipher, you would be treated to a series of images that have essentially changed since the first version of the website. Right now, and we'll show this in just a moment, when you go to the website and you scroll down, you get 3 desktop wallpaper-sized images that hide the words that I'm about to show you. The first image was of a bunch of people sitting around a bonfire, and below that image were these symbols, 1 short word and 1 long word. Then, past the bonfire, there was this image of the naked guy from the 4K trailer that came out, from the trailer that was presented in-game during the Duviri Paradox preview event, and it had 1 long word to figure out as well. And then at the very bottom of the page, we got to see a picture of this wolf tied up, and it had another long word accompanying it. I definitely butchered that word. Accompanying it, and that was basically the hint, the clue to say that there was more there to solve, and they were presented very prominently. The pictures were essentially just very small, square shaped, or at least adjusted to be square, whether you were visiting the desktop website or the mobile website. But they made an update to the website such that you no longer see those images. In fact, the images, the wallpapers now have those words hidden below the word Soulframe in the bottom right of the wallpapers. So I'll go ahead and show you a preview of what the website looks like now. So as you can see, the large, easy to see symbols are no longer present on the website. You would have to actually download and zoom in on the words presented below the logo of Soulframe on each of the wallpapers in order to recognize that they are there. So they made it a little bit more hidden, but when we start off, after you solve the puzzle, these are the list of the known letters. We get 8 of them, D, O, E, S, L, V, and Y. And from here, we actually do have everything we need, given the other words that the Digital Extremes put on the website in order to solve most of the alphabet. And there are a few different tricks that are used in order to get this to happen, but it's a pretty simple cipher. So really, we just had to use Google in order to go through each of those steps. So the first step is to look at the first word that we were presented. It's actually 2 words, one 3-letter word and a much longer 8-letter word. And we already have the symbol that is the final symbol of this word. This symbol here is the letter E. We know this from the puzzle that we solved. So, because we have 2 symbols that we don't recognize, the only way to get any sort of progress here is to do some guesswork, plug and play, and see what works out. So I simply Googled what are the most common 3-letter words in the English language that end with the letter E, and I just discounted any of the words that came up that either did not appear to be a word or a common word that would be used in natural speaking language, as well as cutting out any word that came up that already had any of the letters we already knew, because we're working with 2 symbols that weren't presented in the original puzzle. So age, aw, Q, the, whoa. There were a few others that I used, but because the is the most common word of the group, I decided to just plug it in to see if that would work out, and turns out it did. It allowed me to create a significant amount of progress using the next word. But looking at the word below here before we move on, you'll notice that the one letter that we do know immediately, or at least that we're calling attention to here, has the E there, but we also know the S from the puzzle, from the word sky that was presented for us. So we already are starting to have the structure of this word presented to us, but we don't know the other letters as of right. Well, we know the letter N as well. This letter here is N from the word envoys in the puzzle. So we're going to move on, and since that's as far as we can make it with that one word, we just move on to the next one and see what we can plug in from what we've already learned. And wouldn't you know it, we have a new letter revealed to us that changes looking this word up entirely. Now, if we didn't know that this symbol here, these 3 lines that look like grass, was the letter H, we would only have this letter E and the letter D at the end of this 8-letter word long. And if you look up English words that end in ED, you're going to get a massive list, and it's going to take you a very long time to get through it. But since we know S H, E, and D. From guessing that this was H with the word the, we looked up 8-letter words that end in shed. And there actually aren't that many. This is almost the full list of English words that end in shed: punished, banished, vanished, minished, and finished. Now, in every single one of these cases, the N and the I are in the exact same position. So the symbols must be N and I. So we have... Oh, you know what? I did just lead you astray because I misspoke just a moment ago, calling this a different letter. No, envoy. We knew it from envoy. Well, anyways, I guess I was a little redundant with my solution here, but we do know that this is an N, and it's reaffirmed by this word, and this symbol now, which is these 3 lines and a leaf falling below it, it looks a little bit like a leaf. There's a leaf decoration in the middle, but as I simplified and made them more visible, that leaf kind of disappears sometimes. But we know that this is the letter I. We also know that the letter V is already in use. The symbol is not repeated. So because we know what the letter V is and that's not it, we must conclude that this word is either punished or banished, which means that we have 2 symbols that are in question. Is this symbol a P or a B? Is this symbol an A or a U? So we'll go ahead and just go moving on from that word, because that's as far as we can solve with that. However, we got more information from that last word, which we can now take back to the word that was a mystery for us with the original 2 here. So with these 8 letters, we now have S-I-N-E and an E at the end that can be an extra clue. So it's simple. Instead of, like with the last word, we Googled English words that end in S-H-E-D, we Google English words 8 letters long that end in S-I-N-E. And wouldn't you know it, there was really only one result that was anything but a proper noun. That was an actual word in use that wasn't a name of a town or something. We couldn't assume that Warframe, or at least for the sake of trying to solve the cipher, we can assume for now that they wouldn't use a proper noun, a place name, a person's name in that spot. Part of as just the assumption of the gamification of this process, that they are putting it out there in order to be solved. And like Scrabble rules, you don't use proper nouns when you're trying to create word jumbles, word puzzles, things like that. So sinecure is the only word that came up, and the definition of the word is a position or office that requires little or no work but provides a salary. And this was also below the picture of the 3 grunt laborers sitting around the campfire waiting for someone to come and pick up the wolf that they captured. So we can kind of assume that this is maybe the name of the faction, and given the definition of the word, we can kind of also see that maybe Soulframe is going to be continuing the somewhat anti-capitalist themes of Warframe with how they presented the corpus as being bad capitalist faction. We see that might be continuing with the first evil faction we face in Soulframe. And we know for a fact from the announcement trailer that Soulframe is going to be continuing a lot of the major themes and motifs of storytelling that Warframe focused on, because it just basically yelled the word family right at the start. The person that was attacking the naked guy, who is the main character, I believe it was a she. You can't really tell, but it was feminine presenting at least. Who was capturing the naked guy did in fact refer to them as family. So we have 3 new letters, the C, the U, and the R, which is a lot of progress. And because we know what U is, we could confirm that this word, the second word, absolutely was not the word punished. And because it's not the word punished, that automatically means that this letter here could not be the letter P. It has to be the letter B in order to form a word in the English language. So we get banished. And that makes a lot of sense when you see a guy who's naked and tied up and being victimized to a certain extent by a legal system. The sort of shame imagery is very much associated with being sent away, excommunicated, or ostracized. So it would make sense for that picture to also have the word banished associated with it. It would have made equal sense for the word punished to be there, which is why we couldn't just immediately make that leap. But knowing the letter U from the word the sinecure, we can say that this is more likely banished. So we can move on from there. Going on to step 6 here, then we could just plug in all of the letters that we already had and notice which 2 were missing. To the final words, there were no clues for this, none whatsoever. There would be no way from the information just on the website alone to find what this letter means or to find what this letter means. However, I did go ahead and ask all of you to confirm for me what this word is, because the Rock Paper Shotgun article that I read said the wolves were called Oringal, and that happens to line up perfectly with the word that we're seeing here, but I didn't want to just take that for granted, and you all were able to confirm for me in the comments below, in the comments of a post that I made, that it was stated on a dev stream that the name of the wolves were Oringal, and thanks to that, we were able to solve that word and get 2 more letters, the A and the G and the L, not the A, out of this website puzzle, this cipher game that they're playing with us. So yes, even in the live streams for Warframe, they were laying the seeds, the foundations for this cipher puzzle game that they were creating, the first ARG of the Soulframe experience. And I'm proud to say that we were able to solve it together pretty quickly. So here we have what is essentially the full list of known letters for the Ode in language. The language is called Ode, O-D-E, and from the 4K trailer, we know that they turned that into an adjective by calling it Ode apostrophe N, Odin, trying to make you think of the Norse god. But also, I guess it could be a fun way to lingually distinguish how people speak in Soulframe if they have different conjugation rules and that adjectives are typically apostrophe N. So if I were like big, in order to like say big as something other than a noun, you would instead say biggin, a biggin person, as opposed to bigness, the concept, if that makes any sense. I sure hope that it does. But something that I do find interesting is that we are seeing a lot of cultural influence in the way that these symbols have been crafted. In particular, you can see a lot of the Japanese hiragana influence coming back in. For the letter G here, we have what is just the symbol for the letter Sa in Japanese. We have just the symbol for the letter Ku hidden in here with the letter K. And beyond that, just general patterns of the calligraphy evoke the shapes of like the R family of letters from Japanese, Rariru here in the letter Y. With the letter R here, nothing similar to Japanese, not even at all. But then we also have like the slash here in the letter N. This letter N is very reminiscent of the hiragana nu in Japanese language. But we also have a lot of different factors coming in from a lot of different languages. We see some not classical Chinese, but pre-classical Chinese Mandarin characters, like with simplified simplified pictographs presenting circles and dots to represent squares and lines will eventually sort of take on squares and lines as a language progresses to develop in order to make things easier to write quickly and reproduce. Symbols like the sun can become a square with a dot, or a flower becomes a vertical line, a square, and a horizontal line above it. Simplification of pictographs into letters and language, historically speaking. But we also have some shapes that are somewhat reminiscent of Egyptian hieroglyphs, reminiscent of Sumerian cuneiform, basically things that are more symbolic of the word or concept that they want to represent that will eventually turn into a letter as writing systems develop further down the line. But it's very exciting. There's a lot of different cultures that we can see being taken from here. I'm not very familiar with Celtic runes, but from the announcement trailer, there is also a significant amount of Celtic Irish culture being taken as an influence for the fantasy aesthetic of Soulframe. So it's definitely something to look out for. It's very exciting. I did post this in a community post on my channel and on my Twitter. So if you want to go see that, you'll just have to follow me at SocraTetris on Twitter. I don't really post all that much relevant to the YouTube channel, but I'll also be posting it here on the YouTube channel if you just want to subscribe and don't want to bother with Twitter. So what's next? The next thing that we're looking for are those 8 missing letters. There's no other hints. There's no other way to figure them out at this moment. I've reached out to Digital Extremes by sending them a Twitter message saying, hey, could you just tell me? And it didn't work, but I shot my shot. But it will be exciting to discover those. Something we also have to keep in mind is that there may not be other letters. They may just use the letters that we already have in order to essentially craft any other word that they want to make out of this set, out of a set of 18 letters, which would be somewhat interesting because we aren't missing any vowels, but we are missing a good amount of consonants. With no sound, we would essentially just be mixing and in a language together. With no P sound and no Q sound, well, Q is a little bit redundant because we already have K, and you could mix K with U to make people think of qua. But with no T sound, that would also be a very significant change that you would probably see reflected as just hearing the D sound in place of anywhere they would want to use a T. In order to create a W sound, they may mix 2 vowels together. They may want you to go ooh-ah. If they put a U and the A next to each other, they could essentially create a sound that would be a good replacement for the W noise. Again, with X, it's a redundant letter noise, so you could mix K and S together to get that sound. The E sound could also, well, we have Y, never mind. But the Z, the Z sound, is something that would be significantly harder to represent with just the letters that are provided. Like we could maybe see an accent mark over the S in order to create a Z. There is some precedent for having accent marks in that both the O and the H have this little dot that's sort of on the side that could be seen as accent marking a letter. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about that we could be working with a not full set of English letters for an English-based cipher. So what is our second goal here? Basically, we're going to transition now from having seen everything that there is to see in the Odin language for Soulframe as of this time into trying to be more cognizant of releases by Digital Extremes, whenever new Soulframe news comes out, the moment you start seeing those symbols is the moment to start deciphering and really looking at it as text, as an intentional message being delivered in order to give hints at the story, the setting, the lore of the game from here on out. But before we move on, before any of that happens, most likely, I would also like to go over the trailer and just sort of dig through it frame by frame, shot by shot, to see what sort of cultural influences that the game is using that we could use as clues for what to be on the lookout for if they do any other kind of ARG, if they try to expand this game that they're playing with fans before the game even comes out. So it's a really exciting time. I'm very hyped to be in on the ground floor making content, I guess you could call it content, for Soulframe, because I think that with all the lessons that Digital Extremes has learned from running a game as service like Warframe for so many years and keeping it growing and developing into a more and more expansive story with better and better gameplay all throughout, we're going to see something really amazing come out of Soulframe. Even if it's not like amazing at the start, it's going to be worlds better than the kind of gameplay we started with when Warframe launched. And so to imagine what kind of lessons and improvements could happen 4-6 years down the line is mind-blowing. Can you imagine an MMO that has perhaps action combat of the same quality as, say, a Devil May Cry game, but with the methodical and timing pace of the Souls-like series? I'm really excited for it. I can't even fathom all the possibilities that for what we could get, and I know it's a long way out, but I'm itching at the pants. That's not a saying, but sure, why not? I'm itching at the pants to get any more morsel of information out of Digital Extremes now that we do have the cipher, at least what we have so far of the cipher, fully figured out. Oh, I forgot to mention, the one thing that we don't have is the letter F here, because the resolution on the letter F on the website is so low, I just couldn't tell which of these shapes was more likely. I think probably this one, but when I was first looking at it before they changed the website, it looked a little bit more like this top one to me. Anyways, maybe you in the comments can help me with which one of these you think is more accurate to the symbol we're looking at here. But either way, we're pretty darn close. We know that if you have that swoop and the underline with kind of a circle in the middle, you're looking at the letter F. So anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. This was kind of weird for me. I don't make prezzies of things. I don't make PowerPoints of things on this channel, but there was really no other way I could think of that would be easier or more engaging to do this kind of video. So hopefully this was good. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you know of anything I might have missed, something that might have been shown in a dev stream that isn't on the official website or released content. I'd be thankful for any of it so that we can start digging more into this, or can be ready for when Digital Extremes decides to post whatever they have next for us. But anyways, thank you so much. Do the YouTube thing. Subscribe to the channel, like it, share on Reddit. I don't know, whatever. Do what you want. See you next time. Stay true.